Okay, I think we can go ahead and get started. Maybe a few more people trickling in, but just want to go ahead and let me get this going. Okay, first of all, I hope you're all enjoying the conference so far. Just wanted to give you a little overview of the conference lineup for those of you who this may be your first opportunity to listen in. If you're interested in seeing any or listening in on any of the other ones, please feel free. You can still go ahead and register at our website at OrgVitality.com. We have an additional webinar this afternoon and then a series tomorrow afternoon as well. So I hope you can join it. Okay, so just as a brief introduction, my name is Susy Kamin. I'm a consultant here at OrgVitality. And I work on a lot of different types of projects here. I work on projects related to surveys and 360s. I've done some competency modeling work and other similar projects. If at any point you have any questions or want to reach out and have any sort of discussion, please feel free, give me a call or send an email my way, and I'd be happy to have a further conversation. As we go through the presentation today, don't worry about taking any notes. The slides are going to be sent to all the participants, and a recording will also be available on our website later. So given that we only have around 30 minutes, I also won't have any time at the end for Q&A, but please feel free to submit any in the Q&A section on Zoom here, or again, reach out to me if you want. Okay, and with those housekeeping information out of the way, I just want to thank you again for coming today for my overview of providing motivating feedback in a virtual environment. So, as we're all aware, work looks a lot different this year. Over 16 million people have transitioned to working from home. And according to a Stanford economist, Nicholas Bloom, at the end of June of this year, there were roughly 42% of the workforce now working from home full time. And as we all know, working remotely, there's often a lot of issues that people have had to transition to and needing to manage. Frustrations with technology, finding a good place to work in a quiet environment, as well as all the different stressors that we've got going on around us. And right now, for instance, I'm jockeying with my family for bandwidth. We've got several Zoom calls going on simultaneously, and I'm constantly trying to keep my cats and my dog from interrupting me. So I apologize in advance if you hear any meows or barks in the course of this call. But I'm sure many of you are also aware of all these different issues that you have working from home. And others are experiencing a lot more stressful issues related to potential health issues or childcare or other sources of stress. And it's also isolating to be at home like this and feeling a little more disconnected from each other. And Zoom fatigue is a real thing. It's a different way of interacting. It's not the same to talk into a screen all day and to watch people through a lens. It requires more concentration and it's not as natural. And we're not able to pick up on the same types of cues that people give off as you're conversing with one another. And there's not as much opportunity for that downtime to kind of just sit there and think. You feel you have to fill the space a little more. So you really do have to concentrate more, and it is fatiguing. So with that in mind, there's a lot of things that we're juggling with this, and that has an impact on the way that we're going about performance management these days and providing feedback to employees. But assessing performance is still really essential. A lot of companies these days have decided to either scale back or to postpone or alter their performance management process in some way. But it really is an important to remember that performance management is really critical. And even given the challenges of today, it may even be more essential to make sure that people are aligned towards a common goal, and that knowing when people are doing well and where they need to improve, also giving opportunities to celebrate successes where you can find them, and also giving insight into, hey, how is our team doing as a whole? Do we have some developmental needs that we need to fill, or do we have some great capabilities that we're just not tapping into yet? And hopefully what we want to be getting out of providing all this feedback is to hopefully motivate and inspire people to want to be engaged and want to be performing and to develop themselves. So We all recognize that it's important, and we place a lot of value in helping people to focus on the right priorities and helping them to be effective and productive. But as you can see with the quote on the left, there's some challenges we face when it comes to performance management. This was written back in 1959 by Likert in the Harvard Business Review, saying basically we know that the aim of performance evaluation is to increase effectiveness and not to punish. But apart from the few employees who receive the highest possible ratings, performance reviews as a rule, are deflating and can be damaging to people's sense of self-worth. I think this still holds true today, where a lot of employees feel uncomfortable going into a performance management review session or a feedback session, feeling that, oh, all my mistakes and flaws are going to be pointed out, or they may feel like it's really negative or one-sided, that their manager doesn't have the full picture, and they can find it demotivating or demoralizing. On the other hand, managers also find it, a difficult process. It's time-consuming, it's stressful. They want to avoid conflict. They don't want to deliver negative feedback when somebody may become defensive or combative. Sometimes they don't feel they have the right skills to do it that effectively. And really, in a lot of organizations, there's not a lot of accountability to doing it at all or for doing it well. But what we really need to focus on is, okay, even if you are giving feedback, we need to make sure that it's being accepted and it's motivating to individuals. A lot of these are the different reactions that people can have when they're faced with feedback that may be challenging to them, is they could just discard it altogether, not value it and say, doesn't apply to me. I don't think that's true. They can deny it or defend it and say, well, no, that's not the way it is, rationalize it away, giving up with all the excuses of why the feedback is the way that it is. Or they can accept it, where they go, yep, I see that. And ultimately, if they accept it, we hope that can actually encourage them to then also make some changes. Okay. So how do we get there? How do we encourage people to, how do we give feedback that can be accepted and also motivating? And how do we do that given the challenges that we're facing today? I think for me, I find it useful to break it down into 3 different components. I think the first thing is, when do we have these feedback discussions? Then the second thing is, what should we be focusing on? And finally, how do we deliver the feedback in a way that people find not only that, yeah, I accept it, but I'm willing to make changes and move forward, and I want to be better. So the first of these categories is, when do we give feedback? So in most organizations, there's an annual review cycle, and where people have an annual meeting with their manager where they discuss the ratings that they received and their performance over the course of the year. But we also all recognize that more feedback is clearly needed. It really should be an ongoing process. It should not be a one-time event. It also needs to be very timely. You shouldn't wait to share your feedback. You need to give it in real time, when the memories of what just happened or what's been going on is still fresh. And that's when the learning can be most impactful, where you can have a good dialogue of like, what's going on here? What can we do to make it better? In order to do this, I think we need to have a good cadence going on. There needs to be the formal, obviously the annual event still needs to occur, but there also should be some quarterly or monthly progress updates, like, how are we doing? Are we achieving what we thought we were going to? Where are we off course? There also should be ongoing weekly one-on-ones or bi-weekly one-on-ones where individuals have a chance to course correct in more real time. And then also, as critical things happen within a project, there should be timely ongoing feedback where, let's say, somebody just closed a deal or somebody just made a mistake or whatever it may be. It's good to have an ongoing touch points or periodic check-ins to see how people are doing, which is also another thing too. It doesn't always have to be about giving specific feedback. It can also be just an opportunity to have a check-in. How are people doing? How are they getting along? Are there any problems that they're facing? Not just that, hey, I've got something I need to tell you about your performance, but also giving a check-in. How are you doing? Are things okay? Is there anything you need? Anything that needs to change? What can we do to make sure that we're on the right path. Okay, but with today's challenges, we're finding that there's fewer opportunities for some of the informal discussions that were just naturally occurring when you're face to face with individuals. We don't have those water cooler moments anymore. We don't have those opportunities. And people are feeling crunched for time. We have a lot of competing demands. The boundaries between work and family life, or your personal life, are becoming very blurred these days, as when does work start and when does it end when you're working out of your living room or working out of your bedroom. A lot of times people often feel less connected this way as well. When you're not having those informal times together, it's harder to really get to know one another. It's hard to have those kind of that team building feeling. So to counteract some of these challenges, it's really good to build in those times to just catch up and talk about things maybe other than work sometimes. Let others know that, yeah, I understand that you've got other demands going on. Hey, if your kids need to interrupt us, no problem. If you hear a dog bark, no big deal. But it's also a good idea to make some of these meetings shorter. Maybe if you're having these one-on-ones, maybe you meet weekly, but maybe you don't need to be like a full hour. Maybe it's just a half hour. Maybe it's 20 minutes. Maybe you just need to have more often or more frequent of these check-ins, but for a shorter amount of time. And you also need to be sensitive to the demands of the people you're working with, and come up with mutually agreed upon timing, and respect their boundaries. If they have issues that requires that they can't get online for a couple hours in the morning every day, that's okay, as long as they're still able to get their work done. I think there needs to be a lot of patience and understanding and respect for the boundaries that people need to put in place. Encourage people to have these boundaries and to support them. Okay. So the next category that I think of, we talked about when. Now the next thing is, what do I focus on? A lot of these are the foundations of any good performance management system. You want it to be based on clear goals and expectations. The employee and the manager should be sitting down together and coming up with a plan of, what are my goals for this upcoming period, and what do I want to achieve, and what are the expectations that show how I'm doing. Another thing that to be impactful related to goals and expectations is a manager really needs to make it clear that everyone is on the same team. We're all working towards the same goals ultimately as a team, and we all want to help each other to be successful. This sense of a shared identity can lead to a lot of better communication and receptivity to the feedback that people are receiving. And a manager needs to actively communicate these goals so they understand why they're doing what they're doing. Why are they working so hard? It's also important to talk about not only the what, but the how. And when I say that, I'm referring to like, well, okay, did they achieve results at the expense of maybe damaging relationships or cutting corners? That it's what's most important is it's not only just achieving goals or meeting expectations, but it's also how you go about doing that. So different competencies related to teamwork or the conscientiousness that people bring needs to be a part of what you're evaluating as well, and what you're focusing on when you're talking about giving feedback. Some people can get great results, but not for the right reasons. And ultimately, some people might not get the right results, but it wasn't for lack of trying or for really good intentions, and recognizing that is a really important thing. Also, when you're talking about what to focus on in the feedback discussions, it really needs to be specific and actionable. You need to have specific instances to support the message you're giving of why this is important and where this was an issue. Do you have any suggestions for improvement? And give them clear steps that they can take. I often think of a Little League coach that my son had years ago, who would yell at kids who missed a fly ball, shouting, "You gotta get that." And let me tell you, the kids were well aware that they were supposed to catch the ball. And yelling at them and criticizing them was not at all helpful. What was helpful was somebody who would take them aside and give them some pointers or how to make the play the next time. Okay. And another issue that you need to focus on is it should be focused on helping employees to develop. It's important, therefore, to separate discussions about pay or bonuses or whatever it may be related to pay from development conversations. Otherwise, employees sometimes get defensive. They want to justify their actions and promote their accomplishments and challenge the evaluation, as opposed to really listening and saying, what can I learn from this and how can I get better and where can I grow? So the purpose of the performance review discussion should really be primarily on how are we doing, how can we develop, and how can we grow and become even better. Even for strong employees, they can still want to grow, and where can they go in their career? And another thing is, don't think about communicating feedback as only a way to give the bad news or the negative feedback. It's not a chance to ding people for all of the mistakes they've made along the way. We really should take the time to celebrate successes as well, and taking the time to reinforce the positives is encouraging and gives people the motivation they need to build on their strengths and their successes. Oftentimes, however, we give very little thought to giving this type of feedback. And we give like a little perfunctory, hey, great job, or hey, that was nice work. But to be really effective and motivating, it's much more impactful to give as much thought into providing the positives as the negatives, like calling out how somebody really handled a client really effectively, or they handled a really challenging situation. What did they do that was really impactful? What did they do right? Not just that was great, but what was it that really set it apart? But even if somebody is already focusing on all the right things, and today's challenges do make it even a little bit more complicated, I think of it kind of like the difference between watching a baseball game on TV versus listening to it on the radio. With all this isolation and being more disconnected and less opportunity to learn from one another, we really do need to be more explicit and clear. We need to make more efforts to really fill in some of those blanks and to make things really, really clear. So we also need to take time to focus on employees' well-being. We need to set up more creative ideas for team interactions and touch points. Maybe continue to celebrate birthdays. Even though it's remotely, we can still call it out. Maybe start meetings with silly icebreakers or a question of the week that can help to build rapport. And you should also try to find, are there any opportunities for team collaboration, or set up tools that help people to collaborate better virtually. And it also may be helpful to identify individuals to be a buddy or a mentor, especially those who have less experience in their role within the company, or within their role, or even within the company. It's really challenging for new employees these days to onboard in a remote world. So it's really helpful to identify a buddy or a mentor, or even for those that have been around for a while, it's not a bad idea to have a buddy around for whom transitioning to remote experience may be difficult. So helping people develop in this situation by having a buddy or a mentor for them to go to as a resource to answer their questions as they come up can really help integrate people. So the third element, and I actually think this is the most impactful way of making feedback not only accepted but embraced, comes down to how do you share the feedback. And I think it comes down to three main features. It needs to be direct, yet supportive. It needs to be future focused, and it needs to be tailored to the individual. So to jump into the first one, when I talk about being direct, this is often very challenging for people to do, that managers don't want to upset people, or they're afraid that they're going to be combative or confrontational. And so they sometimes dance around the topic and try to soften it a little bit. They may do the typical feedback sandwich where you start with a compliment, you slip in the negative, and then you end with a compliment. And people see through that. And there's a couple things that don't work so well with that. One, it discounts the positives that you may have said because you kind of stuck it in with the negative. It felt like a sandwich. People realized that, oh, what they really wanted to tell me was the negative. And it also, it muddies the water. It makes it not as clear. Well, were they upset with me or were they not? Was there something wrong? I'm not sure. I got some conflicting things here. So it's important to be direct and make sure people know also that you're giving them the feedback because you want them to improve. You want to make sure that there's very, very clear intentions behind it, and you want them to be actionable. You don't want to give feedback just saying, yeah, that wasn't very good. You need it to be very actionable about next time what I think we need to work on is, and be clear about what it is they need to work on. But you have to do this in a way that is very supportive. You want to make sure people know that you're giving the feedback because you want to help them improve. You believe in them. You want them to succeed. And you want them to have a chance to be successful. So a good way of helping with this is to also allow yourself to be vulnerable at times. Share times where you've had similar issues in the past, or times when you've made mistakes and how you changed or what you did to make it better. And talk about times when you've received negative feedback yourself and how you used it to improve. So one thing I like to think about is like kind of do a little process check before giving feedback, is to ask yourself a few questions. What is my intention in sharing this feedback? Hopefully it's to help somebody become better. Is this going to help them with their individual's development? Will it help them to work more effectively with the team? And if the answer is yes, make sure that the employee understands that this is your intent. Be clear with them when you're sharing the feedback that, hey, I want to let you know this because I really want you to grow in this role, or I really like for you to be able to get the promotion, so I want to help you develop in this area. And make sure that they know that you're on their side and you want them to succeed. Okay. The second part of how to provide meaningful and motivating feedback is to be future focused. It's important to learn from one's mistakes for sure, but it also shouldn't become a big postmortem of all that went wrong and why. And you don't want to get into a big discussion of all the causes and the explanations and the rationalizations of what didn't go well. Instead, it should be, okay, that wasn't great. So what can we focus on in the future to be more effective? Rather than taking it from the perspective of this and this didn't go well, next time if we change or add this, I believe we can improve performance on this project. This signals that they shouldn't stop trying new things. Failures are how we learn, improve, and how we succeed. I tend to think about when my kids were learning to ice skate and they were really afraid to fall and they were holding on to the side. But it's like, well, if you're not taking the chances and maybe you're going to fall, but it's by falling and taking those chances that you're going to learn. And if you're not going to be able to learn as quickly if you're not falling and taking those chances. So eliminating that fear of failure, that you can't fall, you can't make mistakes, is a really important step in creating an innovative and supportive environment where people can kind of be more creative in their approaches to things. Okay, go on to the third then, is when we talk about how to provide meaningful and motivating feedback, it's important to tailor the feedback to the individual. People have a lot of different styles and approaches. And so part of that is you really need to understand who they are. We've been talking a lot about, needing to talk more often and what you need to focus on. And it's what you learn from all of those touch points that can help you to then tailor your message, getting to know them so you're able to deliver messages that are accepted and motivating to that individual, recognizing that what works for one employee might be different than what works for somebody else. So you really need to have that authentic interest in each individual. One thing that comes up also is, do we need to have video on or off when you're providing this feedback? And I think you need to leave that up to the individual. For some people, they really want to have that eye contact and to be able to see each other and to understand what's going on. Where others think that it's exhausting. And for them, it's more challenging to have to be on camera and listening to individuals providing them with feedback. They prefer to just use audio. And in fact, some research has even shown that some finds that including video helps to build connections, but some have also found that studies have shown that people actually do a better job interpreting messages when they listen to the message without seeing the person talking over video. So I think what really it boils down to, that it's really important to really consider the employee's preferences. Some introverts are going to find video calls exhausting. I know I do. And others prefer to just use audio, where others prefer being able to see those nonverbal cues and make the eye contact with the person they're talking with. Um, it's also important to really take the time to listen and let the employee react, ask questions, be comfortable with a little silence, giving employees a chance to absorb the messages. And again, consider the experience that the employee has in their role. Those who are new are going to need a lot more feedback and encouragement and will likely require more time to check in and make sure they're okay. You need to make it sure that they understand that they can come to you with concerns and questions. And again, having that buddy in place can really help as well. Um, Another thing to do is to really try to plan out what you're going to say, maybe even practice a little bit. Try to be as free from distraction as you can be when you're delivering the message, and really be focused on trying to help the individual. And then finally, don't forget the positive feedback. Okay, remember these are difficult times for a lot of people, so it's important to have compassion and understanding and to let them know the ways that they're succeeding even given these tough circumstances. So while this year definitely presents itself with a lot of challenges, it's good to also take the time to kind of view disruption and the change we're experiencing also as an opportunity. How can we modify our performance management process? How can we improve the feedback that we're giving? How can we make sure that our process is really aligned to our strategy and our goals as an organization? And how can we take the time to give feedback that is more empowering and more inspiring to individuals? So I think one thing to boil it down to is whether you're working with a remote team or not, I think it really boils down to three key features. Be timely, don't wait to share, give it in real time. Make feedback an ongoing process, not just a one-time event. Make the feedback actionable and provide with clear next steps and feedback on the progress, and make it future focused. And then be supportive and focused on letting employees know that I believe you're capable of doing this and I'm here to support you. Okay, that kind of wraps up what I had to share with you today, but I do want to make sure you're also aware that at OrgVitality, we also have a free survey suite of online pulse surveys that we've designed to help organizations through all of these different challenges that we've been talking about, including how are employees doing, their well-being, readiness to return, re-onboarding, workplace safety, work processes, virtual teams, anti-racist survey, and more. So if you're interested, please visit our website to sign up for access to this free suite of surveys that can help you gain more insight into how your organization is doing. Okay, so I think I can, I've actually got a minute to go here, so I am ending a minute early. I appreciate your time, and I hope you enjoyed yourselves. Thank you so much.